Going live. All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Saber Academy here at Terra Prime headquarters. I am Darth Anonymous coming to you. Today, we are going to be talking a little bit about Dulan, about the solo sets that you see us do. Sometimes they're called kata, sometimes taolu, forms, routines, there's lots of names for them. But we're going to talk about that, how it fits into our system and what it can actually do for you in your training and why you shouldn't ignore them. We have a good little panel for us here today. So greetings to everybody who came by. Hopefully we'll get some questions going later on. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them throughout the program. Okay, so first off, what we call Dulan. Dulan are these routines of multiple things, different movements that are kind of gone through a set. It's kind of like a dance. In fact, in some circles in Chinese martial arts, it is called a dance. If you did it with a sword, it'd be called sword dancing. Sometimes it's called shadow boxing. Some of these terms are not exactly accurate. Shadow boxing is not exactly accurate. We'll talk about what these things are and how they kind of fit here in just a second. But what we're talking about is not the drills that are repetitive, but the things that are kind of semi-repetitive. They probably last between, a minute to 2.5 minutes, something like that, right? These are these things where it's a single person out there going through the stuff. Like I said, in Japanese, it's called kata. In Chinese, taolu. It's very common in the Japanese, Chinese, and derivative martial arts from that. These solo sets called different things in different systems and different languages, but they all kind of serve the same purpose. You don't see them as much in Western style martial arts, although you do see them a little bit. There is a practice of flourishing in German longsword, which is very akin to what we do in Dulan. Okay. Now, what a Dulan is it's basically a predetermined set of techniques which are done in sequence. Okay. The sequence, generally speaking, is unchanged no matter what you do. So it's something that you remember and you do for rote. Now, there are some forms later on that are more advanced that allow you to improvise within that structure. That's not as easy as it sounds when you don't have a lot of kind of base techniques. So the way our system is set up is we have our formula, we have our accelerations, and then we have our Dulan. And these all build on each other. So what is the purpose of the Dulan? If we know that the formula sets down the techniques that make up the system, our section of training, the drills help us realize those in real time, get the body mechanics right, and all of that. What does a solo set do? Why does it matter, right? If we do things repetitively on either side, like this, or we go through a set of movements that is, that brings us to a certain point. What is the advantage of doing that? Well, drilling helps you pattern these things. It helps you get your technique down. This is going to be working on you at a very, very base level. Your formula is basically just introducing you to these things that you're going to use in isolation. Anything that you do in formula is going to be applied kind of to the whole picture. The drills, the accelerations, take those specific things, the footwork, the body work, the blade work, puts them into dynamic drills that you then can practice kind of without having to worry too much about a whole lot of things. When you get to Dulan, you now have a set pattern. This set pattern is developed for a bunch of different reasons. Now, you can argue about what these things were intended to be. You know, they could be magical rituals, they could be, just pantomimes, they could be doing anything like that. I'm not going to get into exactly what the original intent was and what these are necessarily for, but I can tell you what are the benefits that you get from practicing them. Now, the one benefit that most people will look at forms for and kind of judge them on is actually not valid. Okay. Will this form teach you how to fight? No, there is no form on the planet which will teach you how to fight. A form, Dulan in our sense, right, is not there to teach you how to fight. That's why I say shadowboxing is not a very accurate term to call these things, okay? Because with shadowboxing, you're basically just trying to get a good series of reactions kind of going, and you do this for an undeterminate amount of time. With a Dulan, you have specific things that you have to hit: postures, positions, different things that you have to do in specific ways. A lot of these things are going to be counterintuitive to you because they're not coming out of your head. When we do freeform, and I know freeform is very popular within lightsaber. People love to grab this and just start, doing stuff, kind of there. And a lot of people see value in that because it helps, they think that it helps them, think more creatively and all of this. And it may help some in that way, but generally speaking, when you're a novice and you start going into freeform, it's kind of like you starting any other skill and then just trying to go out and wing it, right? You have a very, very limited set of tools, right? And therefore, you have a limited set of choices that you can make out of your own head. A Dulan or a form has a bunch of choices that are made that are not necessarily based on people's personal preference, but they're more based on certain skills, certain things, certain maybe combinations that people who have created the Dulan find useful. Now, the great thing about a Dulan is since they are foreign to you, you have a great sense of what's going on. The harder something is to master, it's like, oh, I just can't get this step. It's just too weird. I can't get it right, right? That process of struggling through, trying to grab this particular concept is actually the important part of learning, not the actual gaining of the skill. It's that process that goes through that. So when you look at a Dulan, it's not going to have realistic fighting positions, fighting combinations. It may have some of them in isolation, like, oh, here's a nice little combination. Oh, here's a nice little trick that you can do. But the major idea, at least the way we train it, and the major benefit that you're going to get is going to be a biomechanical and a neuromuscular, as well as a cardio benefit, which is going to be specifically designed for the type of stress that one encounters when one is in some sort of fight, whether it be a match, whether it be barehanded with weapons, anything like this. And this probably goes for almost any contact sport. There is a biomechanical need to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself effective, and all of that. A Dulan allows you to practice those things, right? And allows your body to try to adapt to movements which may be exaggerated, but they're going to be movements which are useful to you within a context of combat, right? Low stances are very common, right? We do things here. I'll tilt this down just a little bit so you can see a little better. So if I'm going down and I'm doing something like this, right? What is the need for that? Am I ever going to do that in a real fight? Probably not, right? But I may be pushed down into this position by a more powerful opponent. If I can be comfortable down here, get the hip mobility, get the athleticism to drop down, come back up with ease and all of that, that then takes away one thing that the other guy can do to me, right? Now, when you get into a kind of a wrestling situation, and if something, a lot of that low stuff is from wrestling, if we're kind of getting here, and it's going to come in more in barehanded and stuff like that. But that's just an example, right? Obviously, when I'm actually in an encounter, I want to be as comfortable and mobile and as reactive as I can be in that moment, right? I'm not going to be taking any crazy stances. I'm not going to be doing anything like that unless it is a specific trick or ploy, right? If I know that I can bait somebody into coming to me by getting into what is considered to be a less advantageous position, that can sometimes get them to come in. But I have to know what I'm doing at that point. Normal operations, you're not going to do anything necessarily this extreme regularly, right? However, being able to go to those extremes as far as movement goes, if I can drop down this low, right? Dropping down this low is no piece of cake, right? And if I want to keep, a good, let's see here. So if I want to keep a nice, good stance where I have enough, right, a space and movement to keep a good distance and to be reactive and stuff like that, then that's going to benefit me. By practicing forms that have low stances, have extended positions, and all of that, you get to push your body through those positions. You get to train your body in that way, right? Doesn't mean you're going to do that very thing. We should erase that idea from our mind, okay? Our form is going to teach us specific things, right? And it's going to condition us in specific ways. All right. So that's kind of an introduction. Does anybody have any questions thus far? We'll see here. Okay, so right. So we are. Do you want to ask this question, or should I just read it? Either way here. Okay, so in the second trajectory of Makashi, before training, it never really did stuff on standing on one foot. And I'm learning to balance there. Might happen in a fight, not lose balance. And so I'm being conditioned to face that situation. Yes, exactly. One-legged stances are very important, right? Stuff like this. Not only are they going to be conditioning this leg that you're raising, okay? So if you like to kick, if you like, all of that kind of stuff, being able to raise your leg to where you can kind of just touch your elbow without bending your spine or bending the other knee, right? That's a very, very useful mechanical ability to have, for combat, because obviously you can guard yourself, all of that. And anytime we bend our spine too much, we're going to put ourselves in a vulnerable position. However, since we have a weapon, not as big a deal, but obviously something there. One-legged stances can really, really accentuate where your weight is at any one time, okay? If I put my leg up here, that's really telling my body, put all your weight into the other foot. So I can stand there like this and still have that stance, but not look like it, right? And in Chinese terms, we call it distinguishing yin from yang. If we don't know where our weight is, like which foot is able to move, that's going to slow us down, right? Because we're going to have to make a choice. And a lot of times we don't have that time, you know? So so the idea of, you know, one-legged stances. Now, also there's one-legged stances where you reach, right? We've talked about this before, right? If I'm lunging forward like this, my shoulder, you know, it's not going to go past my knee. However, if I lift the other leg and lean forward, I can get that reach, right? And that may be the difference that I need, okay? We talked about this last time, that Aldo Nadi, very, very famous fencer, you know, considered to be one of the founders of modern fencing, was in a first blood duel at one time and did all kinds of things that beginners are told not to do, right? And his students were legitimately, you know, surprised, a little upset about it. And one of the things that he was doing was he was lifting his back foot when he was lunging. And that's exactly why you do that, because what you're trying to do is get your shoulder to go over past your knee, past your hip, so that you can get a little bit more reach in there. In the Chinese systems, in the Dulans, or in the Taolu, as we call them, in the forms, we regularly do positions. We get into positions like this, right? So that we can practice that, right? Now, it's not necessarily we're going to try to lunge from that distance and try to get somebody, right? However, somebody gets like retreats and you've just missed them, but then you can go just a little bit further, and then you don't have to worry about going like this and then falling forward into the other person, right? It's a way that we can then safely lift that. And you can either do that through the side, you could do that backward, right? All of that kind of one-legged stuff. When you do it in a form, what you're going to be doing is you're usually going to be going onto one leg, coming off of it, going into another footwork pattern, and maybe back onto one leg, right? It's that dynamic. It's you switching. It's going between those two things, right? Let's talk about the Makashi, where here to here, and you go out like that, hooking this foot underneath there, right? Going like that. Okay, maybe you didn't, you're never going to do that or whatever. But for you to go from a defensive position, guarding yourselves here, my weight's entirely on my back foot, taking a few steps forward, going onto one leg, reaching forward with your weapon and touching it, then coming back off and doing something else, that requires you and your body to perform in a particular way. And that's what's really important there. So, right. Okay, so we will see who we got here on the internets. I'm on call. Okay. All right. So going into how should you approach, a particular Dulan? Well, obviously we encourage people to have a teacher. Your teacher will guide you into kind of what the point of that Dulan is. If you're following along at home and you're just following along on your own, we have lots of videos which kind of talk about each thing. Okay, I'll go over them briefly here because there's a couple of different things. There's technical Dulan or technical forms, which are there to help you get your technique down, be able to move from one technique to the other, and that's pretty much its point, right? So our first one, Chicho, is that type of Dulan, right? I'm coming in here. I do 2 downward strikes. I do 2 horizontal. 1, 2, 3, and then down. And that's the first trajectory or the first section. Now, that's not a realistic combination, right? I'm never going to just throw 2 down, 2 across, 2 up. It's never going to happen, right? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to, in a dynamic way, teach my body side strikes that are going to come all the way through the target. And I'm trying to get my body used to doing it from any, from any position like that, right? And being able to do those over and over again. Now, the next section is the Cho. So it's shorter, right? These, boom, 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 this kind of stuff, right? Where you're doing these little chops. Okay, so there's the point of that. So that's a technical, kind of a technical Dulan. When you get to Makashi, it's more of a challenge Dulan, meaning what we're looking to do when we practice this Dulan is to increase our aptitude in the basics that came before, right? So we have our strikes, right? We have lunges, pokes, and taps. Now, the Makashi is going to mainly use the poke and the tap, right? And it's going to show you how to use those very, very, very quick. But the point is it's setting up difficult things, right? Which are analogous to real things that you encounter in real life, right? I have to change direction very, very quickly. I have to be able to enter and retreat very, very quickly, right? So I have to come in, I have to come out, I have to be light on my feet, right? I have to go from different stances. I have to be able to fight from my back foot. I have to be able to fight from my front foot, all this. All this, of course, imagining a single opponent, right? So that's the whole point. How are we moving when we're thinking of a single target, right? Now, okay, so we switched. A lot of people say, well, how do you do this? Is this because somebody's running up behind you? No, it's not. It's you're changing direction because you have to change direction in real life, right? So I'm here. I'm going to change direction here. My target's going to move over to there, right? Boom. Right? Here's where my visualization and stuff can come in. And you go, further on through that. You then get some of the, odd positions, right? Like here, boom, that kind of thing. Again, you see that in and out very, very quick, right? Small, deft maneuvers with this while keeping your body moving, right? So there's the point there, right? You can also look at it as sort of strategic, right? But not strategic in as it's going to teach you how to do things against another person, right? But it's going to teach you what to do with yourself, right? I have to get from point A to point B. Therefore, I can do it this way, this way, this way, or this way, right? And then we'll see if the opponent can deal with that. And if they can, what they throw back. And I have to be that. Now, again, that's the kind of stuff that you can't get from a form, from a Dulan, right? If you want to learn how to fight, you must fight. However, if you want to learn how to fight really, really well, you need to train. Most of your training in martial arts will happen by yourself. You will not have a training partner, right? So you must find ways to keep your skills going, to keep your reflexes sharp, right? To keep your cardiovascular health going, to keep all of that fitness stuff going without necessarily letting your skills degrade. Okay. Especially now with COVID going on and there's lockdowns everywhere. I mean, I haven't been able to get together with anybody for quite some time, right? So I have to rely on this kind of stuff. So you really do want to take these things. And the great thing about a Dulon as far as cardiovascular is that it gives you about the same metabolic tax. You feel about as tired, about as fatigued after a robust Dulon as you do with one round in a free fight. Okay, your muscles hurt kind of in the same way. You are out of breath in the same way. So a really good way to train using Dulon for fighting for competition is to start patterning how much rest you have between these two things. So you start off with, maybe a lot of rest, you start whittling that down, and then hopefully you can get to the point where you can either do, multiple rounds of a particular Dulon that you're working on or that you do, right? And have maybe 30 seconds rest between each round, right? Or if you have a bunch of them and you have to, practice them, you can set them up so that you're going between them and you are, kind of taking down that time in between them. So there's a recovery thing, because one of the things that's really important for fighting is burst energy, right? We need to be able to go all out, stop, recover, and then go all out again, right? So we have short bursts of energy, right? If you're running on a treadmill and everything like that, it will have limited effect on this particular type of cardio. If you're looking for ways to increase this type of cardio, obviously sprinting is more akin to the type of cardio that we're talking about. But really, these sets are specifically designed to create that metabolic situation in your body so that you will automatically gain the benefits from that as your body tries to regulate itself. Okay, so you go through set. The first few times you go through, oh boy, okay. So you give yourself the time. So start with like a minute 30. So you have a minute 30 to catch your breath, and then you go. Okay. Now, if you do this enough times and you do this slowly enough and conscientiously enough, that time can get whittled down to where you're taking 30-second rest between these Dulon. Right? Now, this is a training method. This is there to prepare you for the actual game, for the actual fight. This is not fighting. It may be replicating some of the things that occur in fighting, but it is not fighting itself. This is a big mistake lots of people make. They shun forms because they think, oh, well, they're useless. They're going to let me keep my hands down and all this. I had a student once who said, I used to do karate, and then when I started to fight, I couldn't bring my hands up because I was always down like this because of karate. And I had to tell him, no, you didn't put your hands up because you'd never fought before. It doesn't matter who you are. I've trained a lot of people who've never fought before. Every single one of them has to be told to keep their hands up. And a lot of times it just takes a couple of taps on the face to get them to do that, right? But you can't drill that into yourself. And also you can't drill in the opposite, right? So if you can't drill in keeping your hands up by working alone, you can't drill in keeping your hands down by working alone either, okay? They're two different situations, and we have to be cognizant of this. So when you're looking at the sets and you see something that, oh, well, that doesn't look necessarily realistic, it's not. What it's there to do is to give you the same amount of resistance that you would if you were fighting a person, right? In your legs, in this. And you have to do that through different ways, by either moving in a particular way, by having a low stance or something like that, something to increase the amount of thing. Because remember, when you're in the fight, your whole point is to conserve energy. I don't want to get like that really quick. I don't want to gas, right? So when I'm in an actual fight, I will be conservative with my stances. I will be conservative with my strikes, right? I'm not going to hit very hard. Right. As you get better, you'll learn all that. And especially with this, we don't need to hit hard. And it's actually illegal to hit too hard in our system, right? It's a lightsaber. You don't have to be going there. So the question was, what can you do outside of the drills and working on technique and stuff like that to improve Dulon? One of the most important things, and we harp on this ad nauseum. So if you watched us for any length of time, you will have heard this before, but it's when you start the form, do it slowly, go slow, right? Slower than you think you need to, right? If you go slow enough, try going slow enough that it's a challenge for you, right? That all of a sudden, this doesn't feel the same, right? That's a good way of going. But we will say things like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And this is what we mean by that. Like we said, the stuff that you're doing in the Dulon is not going to be one for one what you're doing in real life, in a real situation, in competition, or in a bout. It's just not. So we can throw that, kind of to the side. What's a good example of this? Okay, well, let's take a complicated movement, right? Something that so in the Saresu Dulon, the opening is actually a couple of steps, right? We'll take it from here where it's down through. There we go. Now here through. Hopefully you can see that, and then you stand up. Okay. Again, you're not ever going to do that. Doing that slow is hard, right? And it gives you a lot of fitness. But let's take something a little bit simpler. Okay. Obviously, doing something complicated, like if I'm going through a bunch of different things like that, if you want to learn that sequence, take it slow, learn each thing. That's obvious. But what's less obvious is, we'll take the very first one, Shicho, and I'll go through each of them. If I'm going through it here like this, my body is having a very easy time sensing what's going on, right? And what it's doing, my nervous system is patterning itself. Now, this is a physical process. It's called Hebbian learning, or Hebbian learning. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. Named after the guy who discussed it. So if you think of your nerves, right, and let's say my elbow is the cell, and then you got the thing here, and you have these the kind of tendrils that come out, right? And how the nerves work is these tendrils kind of exist like this, and chemicals, neurotransmitters, go here between each of these things, right? And as we move and as we do things, different nerves are going to kind of connect with different things. We call these neural pathways, right? The more you do something, the more that pathway gets hardwired into your body. Okay. Pavel Tsatsouline in his stuff calls it greasing the groove. You can do a motion, a simple one, in reverse, and it will give you that kind of same feeling. But here, what we're talking about is slow. Okay. So if I'm doing, let's take the point 2 again here from Makashi. I do this slow. Yes, I'm not having to stop myself as much, right? But I am having to balance myself, right? So if I'm here, it also helps my body, right? Step 1, step 2, so that when I reach my target, I'm in the position that I want to be in. I'm not going to reach and there, so everything is going to be more coordinated. So it's easier to keep things coordinated, right? But by doing it this slow, my body is becoming very, very familiar with this particular set of movements. And you see, as you do it, you'll get smoother. Okay? Even if you try to go very slow, and that's what you should be trying to do. Go as slow as you can, right? So that when you are called upon to use these skills in a situation, right, you will not be fighting yourself. There will be no confusion in your nervous system. You will know exactly what to do, right? It's not going to come out looking like that, right? But to your nervous system, it will be drawing on those patterns, right? All of those separate patterns and the general pattern altogether, right? All of these things go into that. And you can most effectively pattern those things by moving slowly. And that is how moving slowly is going to help you move faster. Because then when you go to move faster, your body knows exactly what to do. It doesn't have to waste time trying to figure things out, right? It knows the weight of the weapon. It knows how it moves. It knows, so that when you do it really fast, it's the same, right? And then you can stop it. But there's that. Now, that being said, you must move fast at some point, okay? So you don't do these things slow forever, right, at all times. But you will get the most training benefit from a form if you do it slower, okay? That's just kind of a rule of thumb. Unless, of course, you're specifically trying to work on speed and moving through there. In that case, just kind of, raise it, slowly. Okay, so, all right. Do we have any more ideas? Everything clear?
I just want to throw this out there. I joined the curriculum back in 2014, and I started because the way my searches were, I started with the Dulon. And I just want to start off by saying don't do that. Definitely start with your primers. That's going to give you the skills that you need to move into your acceleration and get to your Dulon. But we started with the Dulon. We were trying to decipher essentially what we were looking at and just having gone back and learned the skills that I had needed to begin with, I now understand the Dulon a whole lot more. But I just wanted to come on and say that this is like the number one thing that we use in our training is the Dulon. And is there ever a time where in the curriculum where you ask us to make up our own sequence and provide that for review?
I mean, there will be, but that's not for some time. You have little experiments that you can do in accelerations and things, but generally speaking, at the student levels of a lot of this stuff, that kind of thing. Now, yes, it's not necessarily a great thing. Like if you're studying with us, if you want to study with us, learning the Dulon, most people learn a form first, right? Just understand this. When you learn a form, even if you learn it from a teacher, even if you learn it within our context here, right? That doesn't mean that you're going to learn it and then that's it, right? You will have to constantly come back to it and to refinagle it and fix it, alter it, put it, do different things with it, right? The first time you go out, you're not going to get it perfect. It's not going to be there. So you're always going to have to go back to it. A lot of times we will tell people, let me see your Dulon, so we can just kind of see how you're seeing the whole thing, right? But, general rule of thumb, if you're looking through it, don't necessarily rush off to the forms, even though we know everybody does. It's not going to hurt you if you do, right? You'll be fine, right? It just might be a little frustrating for you because you then have to go back and kind of relearn it. But you would have had to do that anyway. So there you go. So we've got a question specifically here about our system. What's the difference between student mechanic, philosopher level Dulon, quality of technique, making the Dulon your own, variation of technique? So we have basically different levels of engagement here. So in our system, we have a student level. The student level is you're learning, you are exploring, you are learning. It's pretty much, it's very, very low key. You're just getting the stuff that what we're looking for at that point is that you have a grasp of your techniques and stuff like that you can then continue your studies with, right? As a teacher, we have many students. We teach a student something. At a certain point, we want that student to go off on their own and work on some stuff, right? And that's your student, okay? So when you get a student badge in one of our forms or whatever, right? Okay, I got my student on this. Now that does mean that you can start working on your next form or your next section. It does mean that. However, it does not mean that you can stop working on the thing that you just put away, right? So you got your student thing. When you have a student badge in Shicho, that means I am actively studying Shicho, right? I may be also actively learning Makashi, something else like that, but I am studying Shicho, right? Which means as you start to grow and you start to go through those things, you're now starting to combine these ideas, right? With Dulon, this is where this comes in. So on our first 4 Dulon, they're set. You don't, they're an actual routine that you see and that you have to produce, for rote, right? But what we're looking for in there is are you able to express the formula through the Dulon, right? So there, once you're able to express the formula through the Dulon, now you are ready to go off on your own and study it, right? No hand holding, no nothing like this. You just start exploring it, okay? If you're one of our students officially and all of that, you will be tested at certain points. Sometimes we may, and a lot of our old students, Michael Razor has experienced this, come out to you one day and say, hey, remember that one thing you did 2 years ago? Let me see it. And you better go, yes, sir, and do it right away, right? And you may not have done it in class and this has happened to me. I can't tell you how many times. You may not have done that in class, like I said, for years, right? And then one day they just go, hey, you know this form, right? Yep, let me see it. And if you say, I don't remember it, well, now you're in trouble. So this is just all part of learning, right? So like, what's the main difference between level? Now, when you get to a mechanic, right, the mechanic level basically means you can now use these tools, the formula, the drills, and all of that kind of stuff to create things, right? They're no longer just a bunch of things, that do one thing, right? You can take it and you can repurpose it, and you can put it into different things. Now that takes the form of Form 5, Shen and Gem So, and that's where you are taking this, and that's why we call it the synthesis portion of that. You've got your intake, right? You have to take all of the basics in, right? And then you can start to synthesize stuff. Then you can start to harmonize it, and then you can start breaking the rules, right? So that's kind of how it's set up. When you get to higher forms, there's going to be less needed as far as rote memorization, and there's going to be more needed in body knowledge, right? That your body is either going to or not going to be able to do this particular sequence. And if it doesn't, then that's what you have to work on until you can get to start doing that, right? Hopefully that answered a little bit. Philosopher, then you can then expand your knowledge and thinking about that particular thing. We use these terms to kind of get away from, master and those kinds of terms, which are a little loaded, and people don't have a really good relationship with those terms, really. Okay, let's see if we got anything on the interwebs. Okay, so we got a question here, actually from Razor himself. With training pauses, I lose fitness real quick. How do we lose neurological patterns we have developed? Now, here's the good thing. Generally speaking, your neurological patterns, if you have trained them well enough, will be there for you, okay? Even when your fitness degrades, okay? And oftentimes in those moments, and I think all of us have been having a lot of those moments this past year, right? Because we haven't been able to train as we've wanted to. And yes, my fitness has gone boom, right? Because we just don't have the spaces, we don't have the amount of people that we can do things with, and all of that, and it's just a struggle. And then of course we've got the busyness and the stress of of all that. So your fitness will degrade very, very quickly. This is why patterning, doing things slowly and all that stuff is so important, because neuromuscular patterning generally sticks with you longer, as long as you pattern it correctly. As long as it's a good pattern in you, you can get it. It's like the old adage, riding a bike. You don't have to ridden it for years and years and years, but the pattern of balance, of staying on two wheels, is still generally there. Swimming, same type of thing. These are skills. These are things that you do that have a kind of move. Any sport, like if you played a sport in high school, right, and you played it, for relatively regularly at a high level for a specific amount of time, right, then you could probably go back to that sport even when you're older and be competent in it, be limited only by your fitness, right? Not necessarily by your technique or anything like that. So that's why your fitness is very, very important, and you should always try to keep up your fitness. but the patterning, as far as the martial art aspect, and as far as fighting and everything like that, the neuromuscular patterning aspect of it is far more important, and that comes from just diligent practice. Like if I'm trying to, right, that's going to pattern my body in a particular way, right? The Dulan being done these ways pattern you in a particular way. Being able to do this, just kind of running through them. And here's how you can really, really see the importance of this is that you can return a pattern to your body simply by moving through the pattern in a very, very relaxed fashion. So warming up, people are always talking about, let's say you're a competitor, you're in France doing FFE, you're in America doing doing something with us or doing something with Saber Legion, and you're before the match. What do you do to warm up? Or what do you do to warm up before class? Most people, I will say, warm up way too much, and they end up fatiguing themselves before they start their workout. So this is where, again, that slow, deliberate practice is going to come in. Like, what do I do to warm up? I do a couple of spins, right? Run through some of my techniques, work on my footwork, just kind of get me there. Boom, I'm ready. Okay? 5 minutes is the limit on warming up as far as I'm concerned. If you're warming up longer than 5 minutes, you're just pre-fatiguing yourself. So a Dulan, some people will kind of use forms for warming up. I'm not exactly of the same mind. I think you should be warm to do the Dulan, but you shouldn't be tired, if that makes any sense. Okay.
Hey, Chad,
So,
in there for 1 second.
yes.
For some of these Dulan, especially if you're relatively new to them, if you are a Suresu student, if you are an Ataru student, you need to warm up before you start your daily practice. You don't use your Dulan for your warm-up because you really need to warm up before you do Suresu. You really need to warm up before you do Ataru, especially as you get a little older, because, you will hurt yourself. Those joints are not going to, respond cold the way you might hope they did when you were 18.
Yes. Do some sort of warming up, to do that. But again, I think some people, you're not going to explode like a grenade if you don't warm up. You're not going to break in half. You might pull a muscle here. You might strain something here, or what have you. But to be fair, your body is meant to go from 0 to 60 instantly. Again, this is another reason why we train. If you train regularly, that's not going to be as much of a problem for you. Your warm-up will literally be able to come in and just go, all right, I'm ready, right? Just to get your body warmed up. Now, if you don't train, then you're going to need a significant more movement and more warming up because your body doesn't know what's going to happen to it, right? It doesn't know what you're going to put it through. It doesn't know what type of stress is going to be put on it, right? And that's where you get into, injuries. Also, to move back to the slow, a lot of times when people injure themselves in training, they're trying to do too much, too fast, too hard, or something like that. It's training, right? Move slowly, be careful. This is the time to be careful about what you're doing, right? This is not the time to, we're just going to do that, right? If you want to do that, like if you're looking to train power specifically or to train speed specifically, you can set things up to do that you're not going to have to worry about do that. Don't train power in a Dulan. That's unnecessary. And it's going to be unhelpful, really, right? The Dulan is a movement exercise. It's a breathing exercise. It's abstract in its nature, right? And it is supposed to put your body through things. So you must prepare your body for that, not just by warming up, but by training diligently, right? By keeping yourself fit, by making sure that you can kind of do these things when you need to do them, you know, and obviously, so yeah, I mean, it's one of these, it's just one of these things. It's like, on one hand, people are being too careful and doing something that's injurious, or they're not being careful enough and doing something that's injurious. So there's a good medium right in there, you know, that we want to be in there. Take training as training, right? Take things slow, work your way up to them, whether it be, you know, warming up. Like, if you don't like the idea of doing something that's completely separate from warming up, just start slow and increase, right? Start really simple. Start with your, you know, stances. Start with some basic motions, right? Work your way up to it. You know, ease yourself into it, you know, especially at the beginning. Now, when you get to a higher level and you're ready to test yourself and you say, can I pick up the thing and be 100% at the drop of a hat, right? If you're working on your cardio, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do my Dulon, I'm gonna go through it, I'm gonna get tired, and then I'm gonna reduce my rest. You don't have to do the Dulon fast, right? All you have to do is do the Dulon and then not rest between it. That's going to give you the same, probably a better effect, you know? So not only with making sure that you properly warm up, that you're properly easing yourself into this, but on a grander scale, and this goes back to what you were saying, Deso, too, right? Don't rush ahead. Take your time, okay? Training is a time for cultivation. I don't know, I don't do much gardening, but I don't hear about a lot of gardening races, like where people are like trying to garden as fast as they can. You know, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, right? Gardening is a, you know, a very, you know, slow process. It's a cultivation process. That's what training is. It's cultivation, right? So we want to be like that. Don't bring, you know, don't put too much into it, right? And try to be as, you know, as careful, but, you know, again, if you just ease your way into it, if you just, and that goes for practice, it goes for learning, it goes for anything. Start simple, move up step by step, you get into it or whatever, right? Like I said, higher levels, you want to see if you can jump in feet first. Okay, you've now got your tools, right? But you can't do that until you have your tools, right? So, all righty. Do we have anything here? So we have one thing here. Any exercises to improve footwork? Footwork. Footwork is an easy one to do. Do footwork. Footwork will give you lots of stuff. So if you're just looking to improve your footwork, practice footwork, right? If you're looking to improve one particular type of footwork, then you can start designing things a little bit more, you know. But if you're getting back into it after a lot of time, always start with footwork. My view, of course, is, again, start simple. Start with your hut slides, right? Your 3-phase steps, your full steps, right? Work up into your lunging, right? Start working on, you know, that kind of thing. Again, incrementally raise it. You don't have to get crazy with it, right? No, there are no Sith Lords lurking behind the corner waiting to take your head. You know, more's the pity. But all right. So we are kind of at the end here. Do we have anything else to finish up with? No? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for showing up and enjoying us today. Thank you, Ben, for chiming in there. That's an important thing to remember. When you're getting to any of this stuff, remember that we are, especially as you said, as you get older, you can't take as much, right? Like, so a small injury is going to become a big thing. So, all right. So from all of us here, I will bid you adieu. Thanks for tuning in on YouTube. Remember to subscribe, hit that bell, all that YouTube stuff. We'll be back next month. Hopefully, we will be starting up TPLA Live again. And keep your eye out for some more of these classes. We're going to be taking them a little bit different going forward, but we'll still be here. So from all of us here at TPLA, thank you. Have a good day. Happy sabering.